Hi, I'm Amanda Morgan, and this is Not Just Cute, the podcast, where we discuss all kinds of topics related to intentional whole child development and supporting the critical work of parents and teachers of young children. Today, I'm sharing my conversation with Alissa Marquess. She's the woman behind the blog Bounceback Parenting, and she's releasing a book by the same name in just a few days. Alissa is adamant that she is not a parenting expert. She's a mom who makes a lot of mistakes, like we all do, but she's learned something along the way that has helped her to step back from the emphasis on perfection in today's parenting culture and to focus on learning, growing, and connecting in the process, even in the messy parts. I love the powerful shifts in thinking that Alissa shares. Even in seemingly simple ways, they can create an incredible amount of positive momentum for parents and for their families. You can find show notes for this episode, including how to find Alissa's book and how to get some great pre-order offers at notjustcute.com/podcast/episode 17. So now let's jump in. Alissa, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
I'm excited to have you here and to introduce you to other people, but I've known you for several years. But I want people who are new to you to know a little bit about you beyond just, we're going to talk about your writing and your blog, but just a little bit about you personally. Tell us a little bit about who you are and where you are.
Sure. I am a mom to 3 kids. My kids right now are, the test comes, are 7, 10, and my oldest just turned 13. So that's my kids, and I live in Flagstaff, Arizona. My husband and I actually also own a brewery here in town. So I wear a lot of hats between being mom and working on our brewery and then writing Bounceback Parenting as well.
Right. I don't know how you juggle it all. I think it's pretty impressive.
I don't really know either, but it seems to be working so far.
And really, that's all anybody does, right? We figure it out a day at a time.
Yeah, so often I think sometimes, like, I say what my life is and it sounds all amazing and everything. And then, I think I showed you on the camera, I have this weird corner of my office that's got a pile of laundry with a chihuahua sleeping on it, the dishes. That's all. We only talk about the things that are working. There's plenty of rough spots, too.
Right. The difference between our highlight reel and what's on the edit room floor, right?
Yeah.
Or literally on the floor sometimes, in my case as well. So I know I'm coming up on the 10-year mark for writing online, and it seems like I've known you almost that entire time. So how long have you been writing online?
I've been writing online about 8 years. I mean, prior to that, I was online before that, but I think getting serious with what I was writing with parenting and everything started about 8 years ago.
Uh-huh. And you originally... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I've known you most of that time, I think. Been in touch somehow or another.
Yeah, one way or another. And when you started, I remember it was called Creative with Kids, and you switched and rebranded fairly recently to Bounceback Parenting, which is also the title of your book that we're going to talk about. And I want to hear a little bit about what was behind that rebranding, because when you announced that you were changing the title, I actually thought that matched so much better to what you were already doing. So it wasn't like you were changing what you were doing at your site. I felt like you were just representing it more.
What happened is I started blogging and writing thinking that I was going to write about kid activities, which I quickly discovered that in order to enjoy them at all, I needed a lot more parenting skills and help dealing with tantrums or dealing with having siblings fighting each other. And so I just started writing about my journey of that, how communicating better, learning how to be a more positive, connected parent in the midst of trying to live life. And so Creative with Kids quickly turned into this place where I was sharing my parenting journey.
I love that. And I think it's so true. And it's so much of where I come from as well, that before we get to all those other things, there are these foundational pieces that we have to have in place, and that that you realize, like you said, when you try to do that other stuff, the creative and the other activities, you realize, wait, there's some foundation pieces that we have to get back to.
Yeah, if you're grumpy and upset the whole time when you're trying to do a craft, the whole point's gone. And I definitely, so the name Bounceback Parenting came from realizing that parenting more than anything else in my life has taught me the value of resilience, learning how to bounce back. And I would not call myself a parenting expert. I was talking to a friend about this, and I was saying, it's not that I'm a parenting expert. It's that I'm good at making mistakes and then learning from the mistakes. So
I love that.
That's, what I share, and hence Bounce Back.
And I love that emphasis on resiliency, because I think we focus on that a lot with our children, and we overlook it in ourselves sometimes. And we're so focused on making sure that our children are resilient that I don't know that I've read very many articles or been in very many discussions where people say, how can I be more resilient as a parent? So I love that focus. And
it's so hard. We get so hard on ourselves as a parent then, and we're so focused on we're allowed to, our kids can make mistakes. Our kids can grow from their mistakes, but then we forget to give ourselves that grace to be able to learn as we go and to be just these human beings that are growing alongside our children.
Right. That we sometimes, I think you said it so well there, that we offer our children grace for their mistakes and forget that we need that as well. That just as our children are learning and growing, that we are. That's a point that I teach when I'm teaching positive guidance, that part of that emphasis is recognizing that the mistakes children make are part of a learning process, that it's not that they're bad or they're trying to be hard, but that they're learning and we need to help them with those skills. And I have, in the last couple of years, started emphasizing that it's a learning process for us as parents as well, that when we make mistakes, it's part of a learning process. And that whole perspective shift can just take so much of the weight off of our shoulders.
It can. And for me, realizing that sometimes learning and growth can be and feel messy. So my perfectionist tendency is to think it's messy, everything is wrong, I'm doing something wrong. And when I can shift that a little bit and go, it's messy, I think I'm learning right now. What am I learning from this? What's going on here? It helps me take out that negative voice in my head and just accept some of the uncomfortableness until I can begin to feel better again about what's going on, or take the next step that needs to be taken, learn the next thing that needs to be learned.
I think that's such a powerful perspective shift. So let's talk a little bit about your book. You have a new book that's coming out, your first book, right?
Correct.
And it releases on April 24th, and I'll make sure that there are lots of information in the show notes, not only on where to get the book, but there's some pre-order bonuses that you have. So we want to make sure people have access to that. But I'm curious what your main drive was in writing the book. What was really propelling you? What was your focus or your question that was driving you as you wrote this book?
My question that was driving me, I suppose, was what has happened? I've kept on thinking, what has happened for me over this last decade or so of parenting that shifted me from frequently being quite angry, having a short fuse, feeling so frustrated, to being able to face problems with far less of a sense of emergency and emotional circus going on. And I thought, it comes down to, at the heart of it, connection, not perfection. So my book is Bounceback Parenting, a field guide to creating connection, not perfection. And so I wanted to give readers some of the same tools that I've discovered haphazardly over time. One of the things that I find difficult in parenting and wanting to get it right, of course, we want to get it all right. And so I would find myself looking for the solution. What should I do? There's got to be a solution for my specific problem. And that led to a lot of times trying things that just didn't fit with our family. And what I believe happened for me over time is I kind of created a framework so that instead of focusing so much on getting someone else's parenting system right, I have my own internal framework of how to face problems and feel comfortable facing new and unexpected problems, because I'm going back to, okay, connection, not perfection. I know that connection is at the heart of it. And then using some of the other tools that I have in the book with self-care and problem solving to be able to get through things. It helps me feel less panicky, I suppose, to feel like I can go back to these basics.
I think that's so important. And I love that emphasis in your subtitle that you're focusing on connection, not perfection, because I think that's something that resonates with me personally in my own path and experiences. But I know I've been hearing it a lot with other parents that I've been talking to and working with. So I'm curious from you what you think is driving this increased emphasis on perfection in parents, because I think it is more than, I mean, I think parents forever have wanted to do right by their kids. You know,
Yeah.
everybody wants to be the best parent they can be, but I feel like there's more pressure for perfection. I think even from when I first became a mom, I think you and I both have 13-year-olds. Those are our oldest. And I think even in those 13 years, I feel like there has been an increase in this pressure for perfection. So I'm curious what you think is behind that shift, kind of culturally, I guess, that cultural shift.
I wonder if it's partly because we have so much access to information that we fall into this falsehood of thinking that if we search hard enough, we'll just find the right answer. And that if we make all the right choices, everything will be easy. And it's like we're looking online for the most perfect, well, let's say the most perfect baby seat ever. And even the most perfect baby seat is not going to be perfect if there's a horrible crash. That might be, this is probably a terrible example.
No, it totally makes sense though. There's only so much that you can control.
There's a hard, that's a hard part of life, is to embrace the fact that there's only so much one can control. And it's not to say that we throw it out the window trying to do our best. However, having a false notion that if we really control everything, everything will be perfect, again, I go back to this thought of, if I make all the right choices, everything will be easy. And then what that does to you is when you have a struggle, you start thinking, what the heck did I do wrong? I have failed.
Right.
Instead of coming back to the reality of life is hard. It's going to keep kicking you around. You can make better choices and you're going to do your best. But just because you're struggling doesn't mean you're a terrible person. You're struggling and hopefully you're learning for it. That struggle is your opportunity for further growth and development as a parent and as a family.
I totally agree. I've often thought the same thing, that it's in part, I think there are a lot of factors, but it's in part this information age that we live in, and this idea that I think we're used to easy answers. Like you were saying, we're used to, I was cooking yesterday and it calls for the juice of half a lime. And so I just Google how much is in half a lime, easy answer. Let me get out my measuring spoon and measure out of my jar, And I think we're so used to those quick and easy, clean answers, and parenting just doesn't fit in that mold, along with so many other things in our culture. I think that's a lot of what's propelling and perpetuating this myth of perfection.
I love the perspective shift. I saw a quote somewhere the other day that said, in fact, I don't know who it's from nor exactly the exact quote, but it was, parenting is a relationship, not a system. So focus on connection. And that's awesome. That thought of it's a relationship. That means there's more than one factor in it. There's more than one person making decisions and having wants and needs. It's not some system that you put on your child and then they comply to the system. Right. You are growing in relationship with another human being, and that's naturally going to be a little more complex and maybe a little more scary sometimes. There's vulnerability involved in building relationship and getting close to people.
So true. I think those are definitely big factors in there. That it's real relationships are messy. And one of the points that I bring out, and I think you kind of address this as well, that our human relationships are actually wired for mistakes and repairs. That's part of our human connection. It's wired for it. It's not a tragedy. It's a tragedy when we either, like you said, expect it not to happen and then we're totally lost, or when we are so thrown off by these mistakes happening that we just try to ignore it and not try to fix it, that we just move on because we think it's this unspeakable thing.
I talk about having a growth mindset as a parent. So again, growth mindset is something that we talk about sometimes encouraging in children. And I talk about we as parents can have a growth mindset. And the growth mindset says that our intelligence and abilities can be improved through dedicated effort. rather than what you're born with is what you've got. Okay. So a growth mindset says you can improve. And when it comes to parenting, this means taking on the belief that our relationships, our communication can improve and we can work on it. And if things go wrong, like you said, it's that opportunity to keep on evolving and growing that relationship.
Definitely. So tell me, as you've gone through your own personal journey as a mom, and as we mentioned, you and I both have 13-year-olds, that's our oldest. So what has been a big aha moment for you in those 13 years that has helped you not only come to this point where you can write this book, but for you personally to start to realize that you have to let go of this notion of perfection as a mom?
I think I started realizing that when I held out perfection, whatever that might be, it was constantly putting that space of being able to enjoy my kids at a future date. Well, if my house was clean, then we could do this. If all of these, whatever this long list of things, if we didn't, yell ever, if we got to bed better on time, all the checklists, whatever the internal list of shoulds, I had that huge wall of shoulds in between me and being able to relax and enjoy my kids. And I started worrying that I was going to miss their childhood. I eventually, when my daughter was quite young, and I write about this in the book and on my blog actually, but I had a night where I was sitting by her bed. It was 1 a.m. and she had been up so many times. She had just moved to her own bed, so this was just, I was trying to keep her in her bed. I'm exhausted. And of course that exhausted brain is telling me, oh, you should be better about this. You should have a story you could tell her right now. You should, I don't know. All the shoulds were coming in. You should get them to brush their teeth better. You should sit at the dinner table every single night for dinner. Random stuff that isn't even related to sitting by a toddler at night is overwhelming me in the middle of the night. And finally I realized, now, wait a minute. Hush. Here I am. It's 1 a.m. I'm sitting by my toddler's bed and I'm managing not to yell, even though I'm completely exhausted. And finally she falls asleep and I realize she just wants me there. Imperfect, not fulfilling every perfect need, me, and I started giving those shoulds a name and I called her the should mama. I said, there's a should mama in my head. And if I keep on listening to her all the time, she's going to take away the good parts of me. She's going to take away the part of me that has fun making pancakes and can have great conversations in the cars with my kids. If I spend my whole time worrying about what the should mama is chanting at me, you should, it just makes me grumpy. It makes me always concerned and unable to be present and just enjoy the basically good stuff going on. Because good stuff happens in the middle of chaos.
Right. So true. And I think that's so common. I know I have that same voice in my head that I have to keep tabs on, right? I think every mom struggles with that. And I think it's such a powerful realization that you're helping moms to come to, that time, that energy that we put into that is stealing from what we have right now. And like you said, this idea that we could miss it because we're too busy having a conversation with the should mama all the time.
After that, I started really working on when I heard myself saying I should, or I noticed I was thinking I should this, I should that. I started shifting and putting in I could. In the book, I talk about instead of I should have a better morning routine for the kids. And then you feel like, yeah, what's wrong with me? Why didn't I do that? Geez, I'm terrible. Why? I should have a better morning routine. And then if you try on, I could have a better morning routine. I think could gives you that chance to step back and go, yeah. And is that the highest priority to work on right now? Maybe, maybe not. You can make those choices. It makes it more of a choice. Mm-hmm. I could have a better morning routine. And maybe you say, yeah, and I just don't care enough to deal with that right now. I'm working on making sure we have healthier dinners or something. That's my priority right now. It's just like, slow down, should mama. We don't have to have it all perfect.
I love that. It's such a simple shift, but just even listening to you say the words, I can feel a difference in my body of how, how I receive those two different phrases with just the difference between should and could. I feel so differently about those own thoughts in my head. That's a really good tip. Really simple.
Mm.
So what would you say, I know there are some moms that when I'll talk to them about, letting go of some of this perfection and this pressure, sometimes feel like, but I want to give my kids the best. I don't want to be mediocre, and I don't, nothing but the best for my kids. And I can't, this is the most important job of my life. How can I, just give it half effort? How would you answer that concern because I hear where you're coming from, and I can totally relate to that, where we can just shift from saying I should to I could, and let's back up and measure that out and really prioritize instead of just taking everything and holding on to it. And maybe that's the answer right there, that for some of these moms that hear, let's let go of perfection, and they worry that means, it doesn't really matter what you do.
Yeah. That's definitely not it either. But I think that one of the best gifts we can give our children is to help them become lifelong learners. And I believe the strongest way to teach our children is by modeling and being the sort of person that we hope they can become. And so I believe, what better example of a lifelong learner is there than a parent who allows themselves to be learning how to become a better parent and become a better person. And when their child sees that, they're seeing somebody unafraid to say, this isn't working for me anymore. I can become even better. And so I guess that's my answer to that is you are modeling something critically important that can give your children a wonderful gift for the rest of their life by learning in front of them.
So true. Really good point. So I think one of the things that is really fun about your books, one of the things that you format in there is secret missions, is what you call them.
Yeah.
These challenges for parents, but I think it makes it so fun the way that you frame it and the way you present it. So talk a little bit about why you call them secret missions, and can you maybe give us an example?
Oh man. When I was a mom to 3 children under age 5, for that brief chaotic time, I was so sleep deprived and everything. And that's like a super trigger for anger for me. I would get so grumpy. So I would set myself a secret mission for the day. And it was just a various, in my head, I would think, okay, your mission is to take a deep breath if you feel like you're going to, I don't know. I'd make up like take a deep breath if you're going to feel like you're going to yell, or get through the drive across town while always being friendly. I can't even remember what I thought then anymore. I don't know how I got through
the sleep deprivation. It'll get you every time.
But the idea of secret missions just loosened me up a little bit, because I was taking everything so seriously. I was so down on myself at that time for the various mistakes and uncertain how to make everything work and everything. And so this idea of parenting secret missions crept up as a way to kind of keep things a little bit more fun. And I thought that if I had secret missions in the book, it's a way to just let yourself experiment with something without feeling like this is 100% the way it has to be. I have to get this right. It's just inviting that experimental feel to it a little bit.
And I think it's a fun way to integrate it. Like you said, it takes some of that pressure off, but I think it also, helps. To me, it seems like it helps our kids not feel like they're a project, right? That we're not sitting down to present to them, I'm going to do this. Sometimes that helps. Sometimes to let your kids know this is what I'm working on, support me. But other times it can be nice to let's just make this a secret mission and see what happens. Let's see. It makes it fun, and it's kind of like, let's just see if we're surprised by what happens, and nobody knows but me, why this was different tonight than it was last night.
Yeah. A fun secret mission. Here's a fun secret mission. Try smiling more at your kids for a day. Smile whenever they come in the room. And even, hey, smile when there's nobody around. See what happens if you insert a whole bunch of smiles into your day. That sounds goofy, but it's a very fun way to just test out. Maybe, and maybe you discover, boy, I haven't been smiling that often at my kids. Or who knows, maybe you discover they're smiling more at you, or that it's test it.
Right. And it's just simple and fun. I love that. So the other thing that stood out to me from your book, you told a story in there about your family making a trip through Death Valley in a VW bus.
Yeah.
And things get a little exciting. And I just thought this is such an interesting story. It just really stands out. And I think it's something, like I was saying earlier, I think every person can visualize this happening to their family. That's why it's so
I don't know.
stands
They
out
might
so
be
much.
like, you took a VW bus with no air conditioning across the desert? That would not happen. We have a Volkswagen bus, indeed, and my husband had been working on it for weeks prior to us going on this big camping trip. We were meeting his family, and it was, really ready to go. It does not have air conditioning, but we had fans and spray bottles, and we were all in this adventurous spirit. We thought, okay, the only thing that can go wrong is if we break down in Death Valley, because it is so hot there, and it was summer. And so, going along, of course, middle of Death Valley, we break down 100 miles from the nearest town, and it is, 120 degrees out. We've got 3 kids and 2 dogs in this van on the side of the freeway. And my husband is feeling so bad. He's feeling responsible for it. And this was one of these cool times when connection and our practice of connection came around full circle. And the kids could tell that we as parents were a little stressed about this, and we're trying to keep it together, And I saw them reaching out to their dad and saying, hey, here, you can have some on my water. Why don't we play Uno? All of a sudden they're offering back all these little, want to play Uno? Let's look for birds. Just talking about different things we can do. And we made it through waiting in that heat for 3 hours, and then getting in a long tow truck drive to Barstow, waiting in the parking lot. And all the while, here is this amazing connection that's happening during this. We wound up at a hotel with a pool, and the kids afterwards were like, that was so fun. My daughter has said recently, let's go back to that hotel with the pool. And she means the one where we broke down and had this crazy day and wound up at this rinky-dink little hotel. And what I feel like they got out of this a family adventure. They're definitely going to remember that. That is like touchstone memory, funny family adventure. And what Michael and I got out of that was this connection that we practice every day. It matters, because in that moment when we could hold it together during this crazy time that was hot and uncomfortable, it wasn't because we just instinctively knew what to do with our kids. It was because every day we practice connection by talking on the way to school, by slowing down during bath time and maybe telling a story, by just being a little slower and a little more noticing of ordinary, boring lifetimes when connection could happen. I feel like we had practiced it enough that when it came down to it, we could go, okay, we can do this, and we can make this work.
And that whole practice just laid that foundation to build that connection, to make that so strong for a foundation. But it also, that day itself was such a great example of focusing on building the connection rather than getting caught up in this perfect plan that you have of this production. Mm-hmm. Instead, you are focused on, what can we do right now that still feeds connection? We can't keep driving. We can't get to this destination that we had planned, but we can still focus on connection here, right now, in whatever state we're in. And
let's shift this a little bit. Let's be honest in the thinking. It's not so much how can we focus on connection, because that really does make me sound kind of like a perfect parent that can be like, in that horrible time, be like, let's be connected. But really, kind of what it comes down to is, boy, it is 120 degrees out here. This is awful. How can we not have this turn into a pile of screaming children and grumpy parents too?
Right.
And that was my only answer, is like, okay, kind of like put the iron to the fire. I don't know the right, but it was like connection crisis mode, because I felt like that was our two options. We can let this get the best of us and be grumpy and frustrated, or there's this more pleasant option. And if we focus on that, oh my gosh, made for so much better of a day than it could have been.
Oh, definitely. So your book, again, is called Bounceback Parenting. And can you just give us one, if you were to sum it up, I know you spent forever writing this whole book, so this is a really cruel question to ask. If you could sum it up kind of in one takeaway that you hope every parent, when they close that book, they walk away with this, this one takeaway idea, what are you hoping that is that parents walk away with?
Oof. I am hoping that people walk away with the sense that they can be growing, learning, imperfect human beings and still be wonderful, connected parents to their kids. And I believe that focusing on connection, not perfection, can help create that resilient family that they're wanting to build.
So important. Such a powerful thing to be sending out into the world. Thanks for sharing that with everyone and sharing your time with us today to talk about it.
Thank you so much for having me here. It's been really fun to talk with you.
Thanks again for listening to Not Just Cute, the podcast. You can find show notes, including where to purchase Alissa's book, Bounceback Parenting, including all those wonderful pre-order bonuses, as well as how to find her blog and other places to catch up with her online at notjustcute.com/podcast/episode 17. I'm Amanda Morgan. You can read more on my blog and sign up for the Not Just Cute newsletter at notjustcute.com. And follow me on Facebook. That's facebook.com/notjustcute. Thanks for listening today. And thank you for standing up for children and for childhood.